Welcome to the Millennial Reset podcast. Stories of everyday millennials that are redefining success and happiness. Those that have decided to face those subconscious limiting beliefs head on and take the path less traveled to hit reset. Stories that inspire you to take the leap to pursue the passions, dreams, and goals of your inner child and not the expectations of society. If you're new here, welcome. You found your people. I'm your host, Peter Goose, burnt out millennial turned human design and mindset coach, and it's now my mission to create a space to have the conversations out loud around millennial burnout and mindset and inspire and empower my fellow millennial besties to decondition from the programs that keep so many of us stuck and rediscover your most authentic identity, or in other words, the Millennial Reset. And I'm so glad you're here. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Millennial Reset podcast. Hey, I got a question for y'all. Do y'all ever have those dreams of quitting your job and just doing something that you actually enjoy, God forbid? I know that I think it's true for all of us. I'll speak for myself too, especially during COVID and the pandemic. It created that space for us to be able to get back in touch with some of our hobbies and passions that maybe we had forgotten about. But then we went, from COVID back to quote unquote normal life again and expected to just go back to the way that things used to be, right? And all of those limiting and sabotaging beliefs pop up that say, hey, forget about those passions. You don't have enough money to pursue that. It's not going to work out for you. And so we go right back to the lives that we used to live, right? But my guest today, so excited to have my guest Kristina right on today because she was one of those rare cases where she discovered that passion during COVID, and instead of just allowing it to linger on and not do anything about it, she took the leap. She quit her director corporate job and she now runs, get this, a doggy daycare where she spends her days not in front of a Zoom screen anymore, but hiking with the cutest dogs ever. Kristina, welcome to the Millennial Reset. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. And of course, working from home as it would happen, garbage truck is pulling up. So if you hear some background noise, I'll try to stay off mute if it gets a little too loud, but I'm excited.
Always at the most opportunistic times, right? All right. Well, Kristina, one of the things that I ask my guests at the beginning of every episode is, the Millennial Reset's all about redefining success and happiness and stepping into a more authentic identity. So talk to us. Who is Kristina right today? What creates your identity?
Oh, man. Honestly, I would say that my identity now is centered so much around what makes me happy. Daily. And it's, does this feel right? Does this not feel right? And really just following my gut instinct. And for me right now, that is focusing on being a mom, running a doggy daycare, doing some marketing consulting on the side, being out in nature, just really doing things that feel good and kind of refuel me as a human being and a person.
Oh my gosh, I love that. One of the things that, I always talk about this in kind of some of my coaching programs too, is we get so caught up in this mode of thinking about thinking what's the right move versus feeling what's the right move. And once you step into that feeling mode of what feels right or how do I want to feel as opposed to how should I be thinking right now, it's a huge shift, right?
It totally is. It totally is. It's like using a different part of your body to really go forward and do what drives you, versus thinking, it's feeling, it's a definite shift.
Yeah, totally. But life wasn't always like that for you. You were caught up in that mode that many of us are stuck in today, where, again, we feel like we have to do the right things and stay in this kind of defined lane that society tells us about in order to achieve success and happiness. So let's do a little bit of a rewind here. Take us back maybe about 3 years ago and talk to us a little bit about what your career was like at that point in time, kind of climbing that corporate ladder.
Yeah. So it definitely all was what I call before COVID. So BC, I hear that term thrown around a lot. So for me, BC was a lot of hyper ambition, career corporate ladder climbing, just how productive can you be? I think that term that I mentioned before, the hyper ambition, is really a key to what I was like before. It was constant movement. It was constant productivity. How much can I contribute to this project? How fast can I grow? How many promotions can I get? Like just go, go, go.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's definitely the before. So it's much different than I am today.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about this too, of like there became that time climbing that corporate ladder where you came head to head with these obstacles and kind of that competition with other folks that were climbing that corporate ladder along with you.
Yeah.
And it became that moment for you where you're like, wait a second, I don't know that I would necessarily want to navigate all these obstacles anymore. Talk to us a little bit
Yep.
about that point in time for you of like, what was the realization where you were like, I'm not sure if I want to do this for the next 30 years.
Yeah, I think it came like it was such a slow burn. It was almost like the before COVID, just do anything at any cost. Completely don't follow your gut, right? Follow that linear trajectory. It's not about the journey, it's about the end goal, right?
Yeah.
And so then during that period of time of kind of coming out of the slowness of COVID and, getting back to, a little bit more normal and trying to go back to that hyper ambition, I met a couple of obstacles with, some newer team members, some newer organizations that I worked with that it almost became like a game of strategy, a game of risk, of poker, chess all the time. It was less
Yeah.
about passion that I felt for my team and the passion that I felt for marketing. And it was much more like a head-to-head battle every single day, being on the defense, being on the offense. And I realized at that point, I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is not me. I want to bring my authentic self to work. And you reach a point in that career or, that role and that job where you're like, you know what? Fuck this. Like, I want
Hmm.
out. I don't want to do this anymore. It's starting to eat away at me physically, mentally. It's like sucking you dry.
Yeah.
And I reached a point, it was early January of this year where I said, I'm no longer going to do this anymore. I physically, mentally cannot continue. And there were just, those obstacles I wasn't willing to navigate anymore. And so I threw in the towel.
Yeah. And I think you bring up such a good point here too that I think a lot of millennials kind of resonate with is that we grew up and we were programmed for competition. It
Yeah.
was how can you compete in sports? How much can you compete in school? And the parents kind of painted that picture for us of we're going to make sure that you are set up for success so that you can go to college and get that degree and get out there and achieve the American dream. But I think what you're talking about here is what so many people are going to resonate with is there becomes that moment in time where you're like, wait a second. I'm still operating off of the same programs from 20 years ago, and I'll be damned, it hasn't worked out so well for me. So, what am I still doing spinning
Right.
on this hamster wheel, and who am I doing it for?
Yeah.
Um, and I love what you talk about here too about that kind of moment, not moment, but again, that slow burn over the pandemic where, don't get me wrong, right? The pandemic sucked for all of us, but the hidden gift in all of it was the time that allowed so many of us to be able to do more of that self-reflection, to slow down that fight or flight response in our brain just long enough where like the logical thinking brain comes back on and is able to like ask ourselves, all right, let's take a little inventory of life right now. So, talk
Yeah.
us through that kind of journey for you during COVID and the pandemic and the realizations that you had that, you decided later down the line that you were going to finally take a leap.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so true how you mention it. Like it was such a shitty time for the world. But there is that silver lining of like, how do we rediscover ourselves, right? What passions
Hmm.
did we have the time to then cultivate and discover and figure out what to do? And so that was kind of it for me. It was like that moment, March 13th, 2020, when like that shutdown happened and everybody worked from home. I was such an office person. I was like, I'd love to be in the office and talk to my friends and my coworkers and be in meetings and feel important. And then when you're forced to work from home, it's kind of like, holy shit, this huge part of yourself that's just gone. And then you
Yeah.
have to fill it with something else. You have to discover it. But then I still had that really ambitious side of me. So I was living during, 2020 to late 2021 in kind of like this dissonance, right? I knew that I really loved that side of myself that was, I had more time to be a mom and spend with my kids. I discovered that I really like plants. I mean, plant TikTok is all over the place, so
Uh-huh.
you can imagine what my feed looks like. But I realized, I don't kill all my plants and I pay attention to them and I had the time to do it. But then I still had that part of me where I wanted to go into the office, so I started to transition back into the office in late 2021. And I was one of two people that would go in every day. And we had, 10, 15,000 square foot office space downtown Portland. And, it was just two of us. So it wasn't
Mm,
fueling me the same way that it was before COVID.
yeah.
So I started to realize in that point of like, maybe it wasn't necessarily the work that was fueling me and the ambition and the growth, but maybe it was just more so about being around people that I enjoy being with and doing something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
It was almost this awakening in a moment of dissonance that kind of put me on the path of where I'm at now. It wasn't instant, it wasn't a light switch. It was definitely a dimmer switch for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about this before. I love your perspective on this is like during that period of the pandemic when we were working from home and then having to then go back to the office or go back to quote unquote normal. And you talked a little bit about this of like the becoming, whether you want to call it coming out of COVID or not. I don't know if we're still in it or not. Who knows anymore? But it's like going back to the quote unquote normal and like how much kind of society just expected us to go back to the way that things were. And yet at the same time, I think we all knew collectively that there was no going back
Mhm.
to the old normal. And so it sounds like that was also kind of part of your story too, of even going back to the office where it was like, this is no longer giving me the rewards or providing me with the expectations that I thought.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I mean, you're spot on. And I feel like it's that point of when you're trying to force something, you're
Mm,
trying to force remembering how you were performing before.
yeah.
Um, it would be like, if you were a high school superstar athlete, and then, now we're in 30s and 40s trying to be that superstar athlete again after a long time. It just doesn't feel natural anymore. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But also understanding how it fuels you differently, right? What are you trying to get from it?
Yeah. I always thought about that too, of like, if companies were to think about that more clearly and like bringing people back into the workplace, if they were to have some sort of like transitionary period, not necessarily about like the returning to the office as much as it was like, hey, let's bring in I don't know, a team building event or something that like allows people to be able to slowly transition back to a new quote unquote normal as opposed to just like, okay, we're returning back to normal today. Like that's what it
Right.
felt like, right? Is like a
Yeah.
snap of the fingers and it's like, okay, we're going back to normal now without like, we didn't have any sort of transition period there. And I think that's where a lot of us really hit that brick wall of burnout as millennials is when it was time to go back to normal. And we weren't ready to go back to normal yet. And I don't think we ever will be ready to go back to normal. And so, hey, corporate America, if you're listening, if you want to it's like if you want to get people to be bought back into the system and the structure, give them and understand and build a little bit of empathy of exactly what the fuck has happened the last 3 years,
Yeah.
besides just trying to say, okay, well, it's over. We're going back to normal now.
Yeah. And I think so much too. It's like, it's the desire and like collectively as a culture, we have this desire of wanting to be back to normal, right? You want it so
Hmm.
badly. We want to just forget the last couple of years. We want to go back to high performance culture and just how it was normal and let's forget everything that happened.
Yeah.
But still that part of yourself, no matter how badly you want normalcy, that you physically cannot do that quickly and that abruptly.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention all the buried trauma from that time period that nobody's
Yeah, for
really
sure.
dealt with yet, but that could be a whole other episode.
Right. Exactly.
um, so let's talk a little bit about this. So July of 2021, and we're going to get into this story in more detail in just a few minutes of the moment that you and your husband decided to buy the doggy daycare. But in that process, kind of leading up to that big decision, and especially in the process of stepping away from your full-time corporate role, what were some of the sabotaging beliefs and narratives that you had to work through in order to talk yourself into this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's such a good question because again, back to like that hyper ambition, the productivity as like being part of my identity. Um,
Yeah.
I was, at a great point in my career in 2021, and my husband always had this dream of being a business owner, and like he's also has a great career. And we were like, you know what? Let's buy this business. Let's take the risk, but let's also do it at the same time that we're doing our careers. So
Mm-hmm.
it was almost doing too much, and just kind of busting at the seams of how much productivity can you do? How much ambition do you have? And that might have been the teetering point of
Mm-hmm.
doing too much. But at the same time, it was great. Silver lining is that it's been a great safety net for a transition out of corporate America. But yeah, I mean, we bought it in 2021, of course, with the help of his parents. We all invested together. So we have like a four-way ownership of the doggy daycare. Um,
Uh-huh.
and it's been good. It was one of those moments of following your gut, and then realizing that that was the right decision.
Yeah.
Not instantly, you don't realize it right away because it's scary. It's hard. It really like makes you question your decision making process.
Mm-hmm.
But after time getting your feet wet, really settling into that as an additional focus area, really realizing that that was probably the best decision we could have made at that time.
Yeah. Definitely. And I love what you say here too about, when you were stepping away from corporate world is this whole narrative that says, if I'm not being productive enough, what's my purpose?
Mhm.
And jumping from something like that, that's always going through your mind to then jumping to say, hey, wait a second. I always say this too. It's like, what if instead of talking about like, what's my purpose, to just be like, you know what? What's my identity today? Because your
Yeah.
purpose and your identity can change, right? And we talked about this a little bit before too, is like we get so scared of change because it means stepping away from something that we've known for so long that's at least gotten us, to where we are today. But what was that shift for you, and especially kind of what your mindset is today? What did it take to go from, if I'm not being productive enough, what's my purpose, to now being okay with those moments where your purpose is taking these dogs on the most amazing hike ever?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because it is a hard transition. I mean, I think you nailed it a little bit earlier, so I'll rewind just a second of, when you think about that like high school, middle school kind of attitude of, you have all these sports and after school activities and social events and, whether or not your parents are the helicopter parents or not, but pushing you to help you succeed. And it was all about, if you're a really good athlete, you got to get your skills taped into colleges and get a scholarship. And it's just constant.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of carries over into the career world, the corporate world.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's where that whole comment that I made was about like, if I'm not productive enough, who am I? If I'm not generating something, creating something, working on a project, like generating value for the business, growing the revenue, then what am I? And that was something that I had to train myself to not focus on. I've said so many times since I quit my job in January to my husband of like, I need to take my foot off the gas. I can't
Yeah.
shift from driving a race car at this corporation to then driving a race car at our business. Like that was not the purpose of me stepping away. The purpose of
Yeah.
me stepping away and doing, the millennial reset and just resetting your life is like really taking stock and allowing yourself that room to breathe and to just, look out your window for 10 minutes and you're not doing
Mm-hmm.
anything, you're not contributing value, you're not being productive. Take a nap.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm still struggling with that. I'm by no means perfect, but I do
Yeah.
have daily reminders of like, Kristina, stop. Like you're doing
Yeah.
too much. Your calendar is booked. You have no reason to have your calendar booked. Stop. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, and I'm sure you probably went through the same thing too. It's like after I left my full-time job and, I told myself in my head, yeah, I'm going to take all this time off and really treat myself. But it was like, it was hard because the moment that you sit down to rest, your brain goes on overactive hyperactivity mode where it's like, wait a second, you should be doing something more productive right now. Your
Yes.
self-worth is going down the
You feel
drain. Like,
guilty. Yeah. Like
yeah,
you're just like a slacker. Like get up and do
yeah.
something. do the laundry, you know?
Exactly. But like, nowadays I carve out purposefully like several different chunks in my day where I just go on a long walk. Sometimes I'll go on a hike, sometimes I'll just go on a walk around the neighborhood, but it's like it's that reminder to myself to say you don't always have to be productive every hour of your waking day. But damn, that's a hard transition though, isn't it?
It's so
Moving.
hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard. I think we're all feeling that too.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk a little bit about your story today then. Let's dive into the doggy daycare. And I'm sure everybody's kind of dying to know this as well as me. Talk us through what does a typical day look like now for you?
Oh, well, honestly, I'm trying to work a little bit on being what they call like an absentee owner. I
Mm-hmm.
do not go in every day. We have a fantastic team of managers, a fantastic team of dog attendants, and just the people running the ship all the time.
Yeah.
I myself hike the dogs 3 days a week because that's what I freaking love to do now. But we also have another team of 2 hikers as well. So we've just got this amazing team running both locations. That I've been able to kind of step away, but there's daily work that has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't set an alarm anymore in the morning. I mean, my children are kind of my alarm.
Yeah.
6:30, 7, ish. I have coffee in my bed first thing in the morning before I'm like ready to wake up. So maybe I'll come downstairs and get everyone ready at like 7:30, but I take that time in the morning for coffee to watch a show, maybe get my calendar organized a little bit for the
Mm-hmm.
day. But yeah, it's just such a slower pace. I'm not, putting on makeup every day, doing my hair every day. I mean, clearly I'm not, and trying to put on that facade of the corporate world. Like I'm in
Yeah.
sweats right now. I'm in like joggers and a sweater. Just being outside. I like to make daily trips to Home Depot, whether it's, for a business project at the doggy daycare or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the hiking situation with the dogs is like the best job in the world. I mean,
Ugh.
be out in nature with, 4 to 7 dogs for
Yeah.
hours and during the day. And they're just like, they're the cutest. I mean, you hike them, they love you, you get lots of kisses. And it's so fun. They all have different personalities. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely falling into dog person lifestyle for sure.
Yeah. And
Corporate
you're in
lifestyle.
Portland, right?
Yeah, Portland, Oregon.
Yeah. So when we air the episode, I'm gonna have Christina send me some pictures and videos.
Mhm.
But I just imagine this picture in my head of y'all kind of hiking through these like super green forests of
Yes.
Portland, and I can't imagine how beautiful it must be.
Oh, it's
Um,
great. It's a lot worse in the winter when it's muddy and rainy,
yeah, there's that.
sometimes snowy, but I mean, you're in San Diego, so you get the sun all the time. The sun is starting to come out here, so we're loving it out here now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then you also do marketing on the side too. So this isn't the only thing that you do. What are the other things that you're kind of doing on the side as well?
Yeah, so one thing that I think helped with my transition out of the corporate world, I mean, I've been in marketing for my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the disconnect that I was feeling towards the end of my, working career moment was that I got so far away from what I truly love to do, which was
Mm.
marketing. I always say marketing is a lot of science and art. Like there's a combination between the two. It's not just art, it's not just brand, it's not just creatives. It's also a science of measurement and, ROI and like where are you spending your money and what money are you getting back? And then how do you put more money into that to then get more money? So there was a lot of things that I had gotten so far away from because I was leading a team and my team was incredible and amazing. And I just stepped into a coach kind of persona, if
Yeah.
you will. And I didn't have my hands dirty. So now with the consulting, I'm able to come in and, just help small businesses and help people that I've known in the past to grow their business and help them do what they're passionate about that they might not have the expertise to do.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it fuels what I love, which is just the marketing aspect. I like to get my hands dirty and roll up my sleeves. It's so much fun. You can tell I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah.
And actually doing the work again as a consultant is great because you can also work when you want to, don't work when you don't want to.
Yeah.
As long as you're on track with your project and having fun and, contributing to something that you care about and someone you care to support. That's what it's all about for me right now.
Yeah. And I like that we're talking about this too, because I think it's important to mention there's, obviously a lot of people out there that have either, already quit their jobs or quitting their job is kind of top of mind for them. They want to go out and do something they're passionate about. But I think that, allowing ourselves to be okay with that, you don't have to have just like one job or one purpose. You can do several different things. And I feel like the more and more people that I talk to on here on the podcast, it's like there's a consistent theme is that everybody kind of has their little side hustle project that's like a passion project. And then they kind of have this thing over here that they're really good at and they're, still passionate about as well. That's more like skill based, right? Because let's be real, us millennials are a little bit overeducated. So it's like
Yeah.
we have all these skills. Why not be able to put them to use in a way that you're using the skills that you're most passionate about while also, making multiple streams of income? Because the bottom line is, right, I imagine that you probably wouldn't have been able to take this leap and do the doggy daycare thing and just do that by itself at first. You had to have something on the side to kind of have some sort of consistent income, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, since we bought the business in July of 2021, we have not taken any profit at all.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely not. I mean, that's the only thing that's kept me like mentally focused on something to fuel that productivity side of myself, but that is not a moneymaker by any means.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're spot on. Like you've got to kind of have that side hustle and figure out, how can you converge your passion, your skill into either one thing or multiple things, but then how do you monetize that and keep that balance
Yeah.
of, being able to fuel your lifestyle and, of course, keep, shelter over your head and food in your bellies. But at the same time, having that balance of still doing what you love and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been doing this now since, July of 2021. So what is that? Almost two and a half
Almost
years or
two.
something like that?
Yeah, getting up there, 2 years.
Yeah. So what did you discover about yourself in this whole process?
Oh my gosh. I feel like in the start of my career, I was very much authentically myself. And
Hmm.
over the years of working and getting to the point where I got to in my career, you kind of lose a bit of yourself.
Oh,
You
yes.
change, right? Like you lose who you are. You're not bringing your authentic self to work because you have to have this facade of,
This mask.
yes, how do people perceive me? What's the corporate speak I'm using? And just, you kind of morph a little bit, and that eventually takes a toll on you, mentally, physically. And so what I've noticed is kind of like dropping that mask and like really embracing and remembering who I was, which was the remembering of who I was a big deal. And so, transitioning out of the
Yeah.
corporate world currently has just been like rediscovering myself. What do I like to do? How do I like to spend my time? And really, again, just following my gut and my feeling and not so much my thought process, and really embracing what's fueling me, what's making me happy, and using that as my beacon to tell me if I'm on track or not.
Oh, I love that. And I love what you said before too. It's like how long it takes you to not only lose yourself over time, but
Mhm.
also how long it takes you sometimes to remember yourself over time.
Yeah. And you also, one thing I keep talking about, I've told my husband this about a million times because it still blows my mind, is like, you don't realize how much of a toll not being yourself takes on you,
Oh
because
my
it's a
gosh,
slow
yes.
burn until you're out of it and you're like, holy shit, like I was really depressed or I
Yeah.
was really stressed out and I didn't realize it until you get on the other side. And then you're like, what the fuck was I doing? Like,
Yeah.
how could I do this better next time?
Yeah.
That really does take a toll on you.
Yeah, that's why I talk so much about like from the perspective of burnout is like yes, of course there's toxic work cultures. The environment can be one aspect of it, but I think for so many millennials there's that kind of hidden aspect of it too where it's like their burnout is more because of coming to this point where it's like you don't even know who you are anymore because you've given up your whole identity to the job title and to corporate America. And then you reach that point. And for a lot of us, I think that happened during the pandemic where it was like, oh my gosh, who am I? But then
Yeah.
once you do the work to then pause, take a
Right.
step back and begin to kind of rediscover some of those other aspects of your identity, it becomes this like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like, how did I lose this? How did I forget
Right.
about this? Right.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
So I'm going to throw a little curveball at you here. So, thinking about walking the dogs in the forest and how beautiful and how different life must be now for you today as opposed to, 3 or 4 years ago. And obviously, you've given a lot of yourself to this business. You and your husband have poured a lot of the work that you've done to kind of make this a success so far. So there's a lot that you've put in, but tell us, what do you get back out of it? What do you get back out from working with these dogs and being around them in nature every day?
Yeah, it's definitely not money.
Yeah.
It's more intrinsic than that. I mean, the love of a dog. I mean, I'm such a animal person in general, but a dog person for sure. And I just feel like
Mhm.
when you see the dogs get excited to see you,
Yeah.
and like you get, it's just it fuels you in a different way, because it's pure. They're not getting anything from you other than like your time and like you're taking them on a walk. I mean, it's so
Hmm.
simple. And so you get this sort of feedback from them, which is wonderful. But then, being in nature and like breathing so much more oxygen and just, I try sometimes to not listen to a podcast or music while I walk and just listen to the
Mm.
birds and enjoy the sun that we rarely get in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
And so that kind of fuels you in like a more physiological way.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot more, definitely not money that I'm getting from this right now. But from the doggy daycare aspect, it is just so much more intrinsic value. Again, I love the team of people that we have that are really running the locations, and just, being part of their ecosystem of dogs and dog care has just been so great and valuable. And then on that other side, the consulting work that I do fuels me in a different way. That's much more of like, using my brain and my skills and my tools and really getting my hands dirty and working on a project.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I get fueled in a lot of different ways. It's much more holistic and balanced than it used to be.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that again kind of have this idea in the back of their mind, where they say, "Gosh, if I could only do this for a living, or if I could only quit my job and really devote my time to doing something that I actually enjoy." But again, I think we all have the same experience that anytime those thoughts come up, immediately after comes the sabotaging thoughts that say, you can't do this, you don't have the skill set for this, or enough money, so on and so forth. So knowing that you've done it, you're kind of on the other side now, and you're really living out this new, authentic version of yourself. I mean, what would you say? Like, what would be, I guess, your advice for others that are kind of in that boat of wanting to take the leap, but so stuck by that sabotaging mindset?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice would be to remind yourself that like nothing is permanent. Well, I mean, there are some things that are permanent. So most things are not permanent. And that, if you have the ability and you have the moment and it's
Yeah.
kind of kismet in a way, like take the chance, take the risk. And like if it turns out that it doesn't work out and it was a bad decision or, it was a mistake, you can always rewind and you can go back. So I
Yeah.
mean, just do it, just take the leap. Sometimes it's scary. It won't always work out. I'm lucky enough that right now it's working out. It might not work out, in 6 months, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
For now, it's been a great decision for me, for my family, and that right now is the most important thing. So that would be my advice. Just remember, it can be temporary, doesn't have to be permanent. You can always go back to the way things were.
Yeah. It's all about the journey, not the
Yeah,
destination, right?
it is. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Well, Christina, I think that your story is just such a prime example of what can happen when you begin to kind of take that step back and ask yourself, are there other options that exist, right?
Mhm.
Because I think that we get so tied up into the structures that society have put in place and that we've been taught ever since children that, pick from this short list of career options that you're going to do for the next 40 years of your life,
Yeah.
and that's it. But yeah, I think that your story just illustrates that when you begin to say, what is it that I really want to do? And more importantly, what you've really illustrated is, how do I want to feel? And when you ask yourself those critical questions and begin to realize that, oh, yeah, there are other options that exist today that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago when we were kids, right? So our parents didn't know. So of course they didn't tell us that we should go out and buy a doggy
Right,
daycare or start
exactly.
a online business or what have you. But it's like nowadays those options exist,
Mhm.
and it's okay to be able to step aside from the old identity to try on a different identity. Just try it
Yeah.
on, because like you said, you can always go back, you can always rewind. But yeah, I guess consider this your permission to everybody out there listening that there are more options out there and it's okay to try on a different identity, at least just for a short period of time and see how it goes for you. So,
Yep, go for it.
all right, Kristina. Well, before we end things here, if anybody's in the Portland area, maybe, or if anybody just wants to follow you on social media so that they can see more videos of dogs playing, because who does not want that in their day? Tell everybody where they can maybe even learn more about the doggy daycare or follow you and share their stories.
Yeah, so our website's originalbark.com. And on Instagram, we have two. So the main one for the doggy daycare is at original_bark. And then the hike specific Instagram to keep up with all of the sunny, amazing hikes we'll do this summer is just at Original Bark Hikes.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, be sure that you check out some of her videos. And if you ever do get in that moment of, gosh, it's just such a stressful day for me, go on Kristina's social media and just take a look at some of the hikes in the woods. It'll put you right back into a stress-free mode again.
Keep your eye out for posts when we're hiring. So we've always got some team members that need some support. So you can always come join the crew.
Exactly. All right, Kristina. Well, thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your story. I know that so many others are going to resonate with this. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Millennial Reset podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to share it out far and wide so that we can begin to spread the word that, yeah, there's always another option that exists and we don't have to stay stuck in this antiquated belief system. You can also go to www.themillennialreset.com where you can subscribe to the podcast and check out some of the other resources that are available to you. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Millennial Reset. Hey besties, if you're one of the millions of millennials feeling stuck in a constant state of stress and burnout, then number one, you're not alone. And number two, there is a way out. Be sure to check out www.themillennialreset.com for free online workshops, or you can become a member and join a community of support to learn a better way out of burnout.